Hello and welcome to Tim Talks, and this is Tim talking about housing. Now, I joined the party in my teens whilst living in an area, shall we say, where there was an awful lot of poor housing. Half the kids in my class had their parents out of work from time to time, including my parents, and we saw around us often extremely poor housing. And it occurred to me, as I joined the Liberals and got involved in campaigning about homelessness, involved in shelters work as well, that there's nothing that robs you of your freedom and your liberty more than poor housing and poverty and inequality. And those problems that moved me to join our party in the first place as a teenager, well, those problems, if anything, have got worse in today's Britain. If you think there's something like 2 million people on a waiting list for a council house, I think about my patch where there's 3,500 people just in my constituency waiting for social rented homes, and there's only 5,000 of them in existence to wait for. If we think that today there are 9 million people renting in the private sector, half of whom would choose not to do that if only they had the ability to do otherwise. And then think also that the average first-time buyer today is spending something like 100% of their annual income to raise a deposit. It was only 12% back in the early 1980s. And that means so many people on middle incomes are unable to be able to afford a home of their own. This is a massive problem. We recognise that we probably need to build something like 300,000 new affordable homes a year over a decade if we're going to solve this problem. This is going to be the Liberal Democrats' key issue, I think, in the years going forward. So in the Houses of Commons, we found ourselves in a situation with just 8 of us, but there are tens of thousands of us across the country. And we've got to make sure we work together on issues like housing to put them to the front of the agenda and to make sure we rally people, use them as the issues like housing as a recruiting sergeant to bring people into the party, into the Liberal movement, and to make a difference, council by council, town by town, and village by village. Now, here's the problem. We have a Conservative government now that has decided to sell off housing association properties. We've got to run a campaign across the country, here in Westminster, but everywhere else too, against that sell-off, which would be so damaging to our communities, emulating Margaret Thatcher's appalling attack on social housing in the 1980s and Labour's failure to do anything about it in its 13 years in power. We're going to also look at the solutions, and the housing associations are absolutely the shock troops and the vanguard of a housing revolution, and we've got to see them as our key allies. What do housing associations want to do? They want to build more houses. They don't want to have to sell the ones that they've already built. We should be supporting them in that. They also want to have the freedom to build mixed settlements. So you start off with some bought, some private rented, but mostly social rented properties, meeting that need community by community. They want the freedom to borrow against the value of their existing stock so that they can build more houses without extra cost to the taxpayer. Treasury guarantees as well, so they have the same access to finance that other outfits do too. Let's work with housing associations, let's work with outfits like Shelter, and let's make housing an issue that people see the Liberal Democrats as having the passion for and the answers to. To my mind, I go back to being a teenager and watching Cathy come home, and that moved me and made me in my gut want to join our party to make a difference. I believe there are millions of people out there who share our passion, that motivation, and will join the Liberal Democrats if they feel we're the people with the passion for housing and the answers to the problem.